Marcelina Nikic says, what do you think of people that commit murder and then state, God told me to do it? Well, I'm going to say something controversial that will absolutely delight atheists, because they like to take, not all atheists, some internet atheists like to take things out of context and use it to make me look bad. I don't care. You already hated me anyways. It's not like anything changed. If anything, I'm just glad people like hate follow me. Like, oh, at least that's there. You know, maybe they're hearing the gospel. Maybe, God willing, there's like some truth of Christ that will eke through there. You know. So I'm gonna say something here. If God really told them to do it, then they were right. If God didn't tell them to do it, then they were wrong, and they were just a murderer and a delusional murderer who's blaming God, which just makes it worse. God does have a right to tell. Now let me give an analogy that might help people swallow this better, because I feel the rejection that people would have to this naturally. Let's say that America gets involved in a just war, right? Or let's not even do that. Let's just say that you have a police officer who is getting involved in some kind of like horrible school shooting type thing, right? And he gets permission from the government and from the local police department and all that when he sees a person on campus with a gun, he just opens fire. And so he shoots them, and then someone's like, how dare you shoot that person? And he goes, well, like, the government told me to. There's an element of this that really is the facts. Like, the government actually just gave him a badge and a gun and approved him and gave him policies that he's supposed to operate by. And so, in a sense, the government just told him to. And that is an actual defense. Like, if that wasn't in place, then you'd have to have other legal justifications other than that the government told him. Maybe in court they would say, no, this was urgent enough, or we would break the normal rules, that kind of thing. Military is the same way. Now, the government's flawed, so the government might tell you to do something and they're wrong. Like in military, there could be a war that's unjust, and saying the government told you to isn't a good enough excuse, because there is a God in heaven who disapproves. But if God himself actually tells you, he's like, hey, I am the ultimate governor of all of life, and I have judicially said that person is going to die, and I'm telling you to do it. Yeah, now, historically, as a Christian, do I expect this to happen? Not really. Biblically, does it happen? Do we have like, is the Apostle Paul like every few years, he's just like, turns into Jason Bourne and he's like, God told me to kill Simon the sorcerer? No, the worst thing the apostles have done was to tell someone, you're not part of our church anymore if you're going to keep living in sin like that. You know, God takes care of them. Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world, otherwise my servants would fight. So we don't fight to establish the Christianity, to establish the kingdom. Like, this is God told me not to. In other words, I don't because God told me not to. So as a Christian, in principle, if God tells you to kill someone, yes, you should, it's God. But in practical reality, I really don't expect this to happen. Not that there can never be an exception, but if anybody comes up to me and says, God told me to kill so-and-so, my default is to think they're probably wrong, because there's a lot more weirdos out there than there are people that God is telling to do something like that. There's my answer.